morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 493 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Thursday, October 17th, 2024, and it's going to be a pretty decent day here at the Beaver Lodge. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Before we go any further, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health doing today, sir?
Well, I think it's okay. another odd night of vivid dreams and not the best sleep. So I'm pretty tired this morning. But it was one of those. Woke up at 4 a.m. wide awake, like ready to start the day. And I looked at the clock and went 4 a.m. No, I'm going back to sleep. So then when the alarm did go off, I was like, oh God. Time to make the donuts. You remember that commercial?
Yes.
Time to make the donuts. I made the donuts. I still say that from time to time, and people go, "Do you work in a bakery or something?" I'm like, no, never mind. It's a pop culture reference from the 80s. You're too young.
I say it all the time too, and I think Alex got to Canada like just after it or whatnot because it means absolutely nothing. It's like, why are you talking about donuts? It's like, and I tried to explain the commercial, but I can't do the time to make the donuts.
Yeah.
Like the guy does. So
donuts.
It's one of those things you can't explain it. You have to see the commercial, or else you just don't get it.
For those who may be confused, it's a Dunkin' Donuts commercial from the mid '80s, where the guy there's like, we never stopped making donuts, and the guy would wake up, drag his butt out of bed, time to make the donuts. And he'd come home and get back to bed. I made the donuts. Then the alarm would go off. It was like a never-ending hamster wheel, if you will.
That when the two old ladies go, now do you like your coffee? I like my coffee crisp. Yes. You don't know from joke.
Where's the beef?
If you don't know, those are like two classic Canadian commercials. And like sometimes you turn around and says, I like my coffee crisp. And they're just like, what? It's like, oh, never mind. Too much time has passed.
Coffee Crisp is a uniquely Canadian confectionery, a chocolate bar. We don't call them candy bars in Canada. We call them chocolate bars. And there was, I don't know if you've seen the film. It was Dave Bautista and what's his name? I see his face right now. He I think it was called Stuber, and he plays an Uber driver. And he was in. Drawing a blank. See his face? Can't think of his name right now. He's originally from Pakistan. Became super fit to play a Marvel superhero.
Yes.
He was on Silicon Valley and
Kumail Nanjiani.
Thank you. I was like, I could see his face. I just couldn't come up with his name. Anyway, there's a scene at the beginning of the film because he's an Uber driver and people get into the Uber. He says, "Would you like some Canadian chocolate?" Because he has coffee crisp bars, which I thought was funny. Would you like some Canadian chocolate? It's kind of a contradictory term because chocolate doesn't come from Canada. We have chocolate bars in Canada, made in Canada with products that are, imported into Canada. So Canadian chocolate. I think it's funny.
Okay. All right. Kits and Cubs. On the episode description, Mr. Grizzly did write something about the foreign interference things. We'll try to touch on it a little bit briefly, but we actually have a guest planned for today. However, we're
Which
having a little
slipped
trouble.
my mind. Slipped my
Yes.
mind completely that we had a guest today. Sorry, folks.
But we're having a little trouble, Mr. Grizzly, because the link you sent me to get on the show is not the same link that the guest would need, so she can't get in. She says that she needs an account to sign in.
That's bizarre. Hang on. Let me send you another link here. I'll send it to you in the chat. This is right off the production line, so maybe you can forward her that. That should work. So there's something seemed to be going sideways with Restream lately when it comes to sending links, because the links I keep sending you aren't working, eh?
Well, I think it's just changed now because
that one is different than the one I sent.
Yeah, and this one is like for me, and like I said, now it brings me into the production suite rather than just a co-host suite. And it seems that the co-host suite does not exist anymore whatsoever.
Bizarre.
Yeah. All right. So, but given that we have a couple of minutes, because I will tell our guest to join us in 15, and that will give us time to tackle this, because I just wouldn't want our guests sitting in the green room while we do this. But the Prime Minister yesterday testified at the Foreign Interference Committee and dropped a few bombshells. And given that we have you only for the first little bit, Mr. Grizzly, and there's a little clip of video that we should show in order to understand what happened yesterday. I haven't had time, Kits and Cubs, to watch the entire 6 hours and 30 minutes.
I watched a good chunk of it, but not all of it. I watched what I could.
Yeah, because yesterday your Beaver was rocking the curling. Won our two-person stick match, and with Kit Michael, we actually won our doubles match last night. I didn't think we would win a match until like 9 or 10 games into the season, but we won in A division. It's like only his second doubles match ever. I think I might have picked up a ringer. So yes, I didn't have a chance to watch it. I did watch the Saskatchewan debate last night, however, and apparently there was a round table as well, and it seems that the consensus is that Carla Bick did win the debate. Now, when we say win, no knockouts, but she did land more punches than did Scott Moen. A couple of times he looked uncomfortable, but I think nobody did themselves any harm with their respective bases. And it seems that on the round table, which I've not seen yet, but our guest today says that Miss Holt really nailed it, and that Blaine Higgs looked a bit old and tired. So we will see. But yesterday at the Foreign Interference Committee, this is a long clip. It's about 7 minutes or so, 7 minutes and a half. But we're going to play it because this is the thing that is going all around the news. And sometimes you see a little clip, but the entire clip is actually way more damning than the little clip that's going on.
Agreed. I've seen a number of, tidbits here and there, but this is way worse. Okay, let's get this started here. Come on.
So essentially, information came to your attention, and it was through the system put to the right people in the right places.
I think it is perhaps useful to point out, we don't need to pull it up, but two things. First of all, I'm Prime Minister, so I receive tremendous amount of classified information covering a broad range of individuals across this country, including in different political parties. But as leader of the Liberal Party, it is awkward, to say the least, to use a mild word, for me to be engaging in who should run or what consequences or who should be a critic or who should be in what position for an opposition party. So as you pointed out earlier, the answer was to offer classified briefings to all the leaders of the parties so that they could best be positioned to take the necessary actions to protect their MPs, some of whom might be vulnerable, some of whom might be witting or unwitting around foreign interference, and therefore demonstrate to Canadians that the integrity of their parties and the protection of their parties from federal foreign interference was done. And that was always my instinct. I shouldn't be, I can know about it. I don't act on that stuff because I don't believe in the partisan using national security information for partisan purposes, nor should any prime minister. But informing the leader so they can take proper actions is, I think, the right way of doing things. Stepping away from this specific example, because I don't want to weigh into this
take it down.
example. Because I am Prime Minister and privy to all these informations, I have the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians and/or candidates in the Conservative Party of Canada who are engaged or at high risk of, or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference. And I have directed CSIS and others to try and inform the Conservative Party leader to be warned and armed to be able to make decisions that protect the integrity of that party, of its members, from attempts at activities around foreign interference. And the decision by the leader of the Conservative Party to not get those classified briefings means that nobody in his party, not him, and nobody in a position of power knows the names of these individuals and can take appropriate action. It also means nobody's there to stand up for those individuals if the intelligence is shoddy or incomplete or just allegations from a single source. And that is something that as you've seen, we are ready to question intelligence when it comes towards the Liberal Party members, because we need to make sure if you're going to end someone's career, you're doing it in a responsible way. The decision of the leader of the Conservative Party to not receive the necessary clearance to get those names and protect the integrity of his party is bewildering to me and entirely lacks common sense. Particularly when you look at the NSICOP report that clearly lays out, the public NSICOP report that clearly lays out that in both of the most recent Conservative leadership races, there was foreign interference. The fact that there seems to be absolutely no curiosity or openness in trying to figure out what happened or whether someone was compromised or whether a foreign country impacted those leadership races is simply irresponsible. The fact that we see, and I'm getting a little more partisan than I've tried to in this case, but it is so egregious to me that the leader of the official opposition, who is certainly trying very hard to become prime minister, is choosing to play partisan games with foreign interference and accusations on foreign interference, but not taking it the least bit serious as regards to his own responsibilities as party leader, or even to get top officials within his party briefed up as they bring on candidates from across the country, is inexplicable and, quite frankly, concerning. So stepping back from that, our recommendation, and certainly one of the things that is alluded to in some of these reports, and certainly the commission's work can be, is to indicate that it would probably be pretty important that, as a matter of course, party leaders, certainly of the main political parties, maybe not the Marxist-Leninist candidate that runs against me every election in Papineau, but certainly the main political parties, be given security briefings and clearances that allow them to respond to the very real threats that we have seen of foreign interference in their parties, and that top officials at the party level, as Jeremy Broadhurst was by dint of his day job in my government outside of the campaign period, was able to take that information and discuss with me the consequences that should be meted out, or whether action should be taken or not. It is, I think, a vulnerability to foreign interference that we have as a democracy that some party leaders have decided not to get access to some names that would be very germane for them to at least know and understand the risks around.
Okay.
I think you're on mute, Mr. Grizzly.
Yeah, I was.
So, yeah, that was the bombshell. Now, there later on in the session, Prime Minister mentioned that there was also, liberals on the name of that list.
Yes.
Some people have made the comment, Kit James here, who's in the chat as well, that the Prime Minister not proactively mentioning that there were liberals on the list at this particular moment was something that did not make him look good, or that he ruined it. I personally disagree with that, because he made it very clear before he started. Says, like, this, I'm going to be more partisan than I'd want it to be. And at the end, he says, now aside from that, so this was clearly an aside, and it's not like anybody did not know that there were liberal names on the list, given what happened to Han Dong.
Mm-hmm.
Right, his name was released publicly. So it's not something that he needed to state. It doesn't create the impression that he was trying to hide something, because the point within the context of this is the point that all the major leaders have the clearance, or are on their way to try to get their clearance. Because I don't know if Mr. Blanchet has secured his yet, but he has sat for it. Because it takes a while. If you're a new person, it might take up about 6 months. If you're renewing it, it might take a little less time, but you do have to renew it.
It's still time. It takes time, because they look for that type of clearance. They dig back to kindergarten.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
But I mean, if you've already had it, not much has changed. You still have to renew it every X number of
Correct.
years. There was on Power and Politics yesterday, we had two emeritus members of the intelligence community, Ward Alcock, and I can't remember the name of the other person off the top of my head now. But they were explaining that type of thing. And as you said, Mr. Grizzly, if you have material changes to your life, well, last time that Pierre Poilievre was a member of the Privy, well, you don't necessarily lose the designation, but when he was in cabinet as a member of the Privy Council, that was way more than 2 years ago.
Yes.
And there have been material changes to his life, as in he got married. Mm-hmm. For example, which prompts other things.
Correct.
And lately, he has been having some associations with certain groups of people that would probably prompt a little bit of a deeper dive.
Well, truth be told, when it comes to security clearance, and I know there's people in the chat who do understand how it works, it's when you get married, you could lose your clearance if you do not submit to new examination thereof. They will literally pull it away, because if they feel that your spouse is compromised in one way or another, or could be compromising to you, or could be somebody who's tied to something. I mean, it's complicated, but that's how it works. And he won't go for his clearance. He refuses to get it. And I had a conversation last night with a gentleman. I said, he absolutely refuses to get it. And he says, well, that's so he won't be gagged by Trudeau. I'm like, but he doesn't know what he's talking about. So right now he can lie with impunity, make baseless accusations because he doesn't have any facts. I go, how is that something the leader of a party should have, or shouldn't have, I should say? How he should have his clearance, period. You want to lead a party, you should be cleared, top secret, or cosmic in this case, so that you can see information of this type. It's like, it's mind-blowing to me that he refuses to get it. And his excuse is, well, I'll be gagged by Trudeau. Yet every other party leader went and got their clearance.
And has been able to talk. I mean, Miss May has had a lot to say.
As has Jugmeat.
Right?
So, come on, dude, you're not gagged.
No, you're not gagged. Just like you have to be circumspect about what you say, but you're not gagged.
Well, and the other thing is they will give you a list of what you can say, right? They'll give you a redacted, if you will, so that this is what you can speak about.
Yes. Now, is it true that Trudeau probably would have did himself a bit of a better service had he mentioned both in that particular answer? Yes, because the whole point of this entire bit of testimony later on through other elements is that the Prime Minister said with that information what it is that he was able to do within his party with certain things. And the point is that the leader of the opposition is not able to do these things. Now, as you know, the leader of the opposition has been very, very, very quiet since this came out, and there's a couple of reasons. One, knowing that the Prime Minister was going to testify, he certainly couldn't risk going first with some type of denial and having the Prime Minister rebut it on the stand under oath, right? That would probably be an issue. So he tried not to say anything. But here's the thing. Once the Prime Minister went first, I thought, okay, he'll be like quiet for a couple of days and then maybe come out on Monday where they'll have another one of those press conferences where they'll start attacking the journalists when they start asking him questions that are uncomfortable and he doesn't want to answer. And then he would come up with a response, but he came out with a response yesterday, and the response that he came out with yesterday wasn't so much a response as it was a panicked meltdown.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now, this one, he was happy to put on his own Twitter feed with his own name, but not the other one denouncing what happened in India. And he just puts a thing out that says, release the names, which I will put up here for you, Mr. Grizzly. Release the names. And then he puts this long screed here, which has information in there that has already been debunked, like immediately debunked by these same emeritus people in the intelligence community. Now, I would like to go into this at the moment, but our guest is with us, and I want to be respectful of their time. So I will move away from this. I wanted to make sure we had the video, and then I might be able to finish a little bit with this later.
We can get back to it.
But let's put a pin in that. But there is more to this because the leader of the opposition opted for a track that probably will not serve him well.
Correct.
Correct. All right. Now, Geese and Cubs, this is not only episode 493 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show, but episode, I believe now it would be 59 of the True North Eager Beaver interview project.
Correct.
Because with us today, we have a guest that I have been hoping to have on the show for a very, very long time, and I am so excited. Our guest came to our attention around the time when all the fallout from Policy 713 in New Brunswick happened. I didn't say it before, but yes, kids, this is another focused New Brunswick episode because the election is very, very, very soon. And how would I put it? This person, if allyship is definitely a term that is conferred a title that is conferred ally. This person has earned it big time. She's an advocate for 2S LGBTQ plus youth. She's a former high school teacher with 30 plus years experience, a recipient of King Charles III Coronation Award, a New Brunswick Human Rights Award member as a member of Pride in Education, which is an organization. I'm not sure if she founded it, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out if she did. But we'll ask her, but with which she is very heavily involved. She's the co-chair of Equality New Brunswick, the former co-chair of Pride in Education. She's been named a New Brunswick Pride Hero, former patient experience advisor for Horizons Health Patient and Family Advisory Council, and an addicted pickleball enthusiast. I still have not tried that yet, so I have to ask about that too, because I hear it's a lot of fun.
Here's the thing. I just a question before we bring her on. Maybe she can answer this for me. I used to know of this game called paddle tennis, and now it's called pickleball. Is it the same thing or is it different? Let us know.
We'll have to find out. Kids and Cubs, please put your paws up and give a big round of applause for Gail Costello. Hello.
Good morning. Hello.
Good morning. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge. And sorry it was so tricky to get you in today.
Yeah, that's all right. I wasn't sure if we were dealing with, Atlantic time, Eastern time. I switched my browser to Chrome and then my camera wouldn't work. So I now went back to Safari. So, a few things like that. So
I understand.
All right.
I'm glad we got it all worked out.
Yes. And for us, as we keep on saying, it's like our platform completely changed. So we're having trouble, particularly with the links. Even for me as a host, I have to ask Mr. Grizzly, not this one. This one's not working either.
Yeah. I don't know, something since they updated the software to the Restream platform, there's been all kinds of complications, to say the least. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Technology. Yes. But we're all here together now.
Yeah.
Gail, I always ask Mr. Grizzly at the start of the show, how's your mental health doing today? How is your mental health doing today?
It's doing fine. There's
Nice.
yeah. I talked about pickleball. Pickleball is my mental health break. I absolutely am addicted to it, and it really is what has kept me sort of sane in the past year and a half. It's a whole new world that I didn't know about. It's incredibly social. Our club has 300 or 400 members in it,
Oh, wow.
and I never thought that I would know 300 or 400 people after I retired, and I know almost all of them. Like it's incredible. So the sport itself plus the social, it's just fabulous. So it really keeps my mental health on track.
Yeah, I could imagine that, because I like sports for that way too, because I mean, if you want to play the sport right, then you have to focus on the ball.
Yeah,
You can't be
that's
thinking
right.
about other stuff.
Yeah, and I grew up in a sports family, competitive. My mom and dad were both in the New Brunswick Sports Hall of Fame. My
wow.
dad was in twice, my mom was in once. And so we grew up, all my brothers and sisters, playing every sport going. And but pickleball, well, it's new to us, although it actually started in the 60s, if you can believe it. But it's become really popular now. They say it's the fastest growing sport in the world, and we just can't rent enough facilities. We're
Yeah.
renting churches and schools and arenas and every place going, and still can't keep up with the demand.
Yeah,
Anyway.
our curling arena turns into a whole bunch of pickleball courts during the off season. Melt down the
Yeah.
ice and have people come in. Yeah.
I've never played, but I'm curious. Is it growing so fast because it's similar to tennis, but it's less strenuous on the body than tennis is?
I think that's part of it. Most times you play doubles. You play on a court that's the size of a badminton court.
Okay.
So it literally is a badminton court, and so it's a smaller court. And most of the time you play doubles. And the interesting thing about it that makes it really inclusive and accessible to everybody is that you play based on your level. So you kind of have a level, whether you're a 2 or a 2.5 or a 3. And with our clubs, and I think a lot of clubs, they'll say, this morning is for 2 to 3s. And the next time they'll say, oh, it's from 3 to 3.5. So you're playing with people sort of your own level. And then when you go on the social days, it's all mixed up, but everybody is just so respectful. If you're playing with someone, people in their 80s are playing. And
Right.
I remember the first time my wife and I walked in, we decided to join pickleball. A friend contacted us, and my parents had just passed away, and I was kind of in a bad place. My parents both died close together, and so I was not in a great place. I retired to look after them, and then they passed away before this next fall even came around. And so I wasn't in a great place, and one of my friends asked us to come and try pickleball, and we went outside and tried it, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. But on the way back, we decided to go to, I don't know, a store, and we bought our first paddles. And then we got home, and my partner said, well, I'm gonna sign up for the club. And I said, okay, well, I will too, just copying whatever she does. And so we found out between the two of us it was going to be, I don't know, like $900 for the year. And I was like, what? I'm not paying $900 for this stupid game. And my partner said, well, I am. And then I was like, fear of missing out. I was like, okay, well, I am too then. And the next thing you know, we're signed up. We've got memberships. We've got the pickleball paddles. We've got the balls. We've got the whole works. And I'm so glad I did it. It really has changed my world.
$900 though.
Fantastic.
That's a lot because.
Well, that's for 2 people. If you think about it,
Okay.
you have to pay a Pickleball Canada membership for insurance. You pay at
Right.
Pickleball New Brunswick, and so, but for 2 people.
Okay,
And
so $450 a piece, sort of thing.
Yeah, $450 a piece, and that covers. I mean, right now with our club, we're paying over $11,000 a month in rental fees. That's how many people are playing, and the facilities that we're renting. So if you think about golf, that can be $2,000-$3,000 to play for the summer. So this is like a year membership. So it's really not an expensive sport.
Well, I was thinking of it in relationship to what I paid for dragon boating or hockey, but dragon boating's around $400. So, and that's a short season.
Yeah.
And I don't do it anymore because I tore my shoulder. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So $450.
So-
When you said $900, I thought you meant per person. I'm like, that's a lot. But $450
No,
per person
yeah.
is completely reasonable, especially for a full season.
Yeah,
like a full
and
year.
you can pay. You can not join and just pay a drop-in fee. You can
Yeah.
pay monthly, but it's a little more expensive.
Of course.
And but it's really great. As soon as you walk in, it's like coming to a social club. People see that you're new, and they're like, "Oh, there's a new person." They come right over. When did you start? Do you want to come play with us? It's a great environment. And then if you do have that competitive spirit, then
Okay,
you have the opportunity to take clinics. I've now become a level 1 certified coach. I go to tournaments.
Wow, you're all in.
I am all in. I like the more tournaments, the better. I've traveled. I went in provincials, and then there's also you can go in singles, you can go in doubles, you can go in mixed doubles. I'm in a tournament this weekend, and I'm participating in 3 different events. So it's
Yeah.
my thing. I
Very
love
cool.
it. I love
Okay,
Cool.
I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah.
I'm like that about tennis, curling, and when I was swimming back in the day, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like I had to I don't want to just do my individual events only. I want to be in all the relays too.
Sort of organize my entire day around when pickleball is.
Yes. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Ah, how wonderful, wonderful. I am sorry for your loss, though. That's a hard hit.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, it was. They both were extremely active and extremely healthy, and then both of them started not feeling well at the same time. And they both get diagnosed with terminal cancer on the same day weekend.
Oh, my.
And anyway, it
Wow.
was. So that's how I actually ended up on the Horizon Health patient experience advisor, because I was taking one parent to chemo in the morning and coming home and getting them lunch and getting them in bed, and then taking the other one in the afternoon. And it was a lot. And, they're elderly, and COVID had hit, and it was just, yeah. So I was I was in every department going. My mom walked out of palliative care 3 times. She ended up in palliative care and recovered, took her home and in palliative care again. So I think I was in every department, emergency, palliative care. And so I got invited to be on this committee to provide, I guess, feedback on how to improve hospital care and stuff like that. So,
You learn
you
the
know,
system well that way. Eh?
yeah. So, you have a lot of times you have 2 situations. You might have parents who've been sick. My partner's dad was sick for years and years and years and years and passed away around the same time my parents did.
Oh
And
my.
Wow.
yeah, plus our 2 dogs. Like those COVID things,
Jeez.
that was a hard time. That's why I really loved pickleball. But we were really fortunate, my brothers and sisters, in that my parents were healthy until bam, they weren't.
Yeah.
And even when they got sick and they were sort of in their early mid 80s, they were surprised. They're like, I can't believe this happened to us. And we jokingly would say, well, what did you think was going to happen? They're like, I don't know. We didn't think about it because they hadn't had any health problems. So, we were fortunate and they were fortunate to have great, long, healthy lives. And we have a lot of good memories. So, but thank you.
I have a
That's a lot of loss in a very
That's a
short
lot of
amount
loss,
of time. And
Yeah.
a woman I know whose parents had been divorced for over 20 years. Both developed and succumbed to the exact same type of extremely rare brain cancer.
Oh,
And they'd not been together for over 20 years, but they both developed and so she's asking and looking into this, like, this is an extremely rare form of brain cancer. They both developed and died of the same thing within 2 weeks of one another. So there's kind of like she wants to figure out how that happened. Was it an environmental thing where they were living? Was it, and they weren't even living in the same dwelling for over 20 years. So it's just one of those things,
and I know it's a controversial topic, but my mom and dad both signed up for medical assistance in dying. And that was quite a process. I mean, they just wanted to have it as a backup plan in case they couldn't handle the pain. My mom had lung cancer, my dad had leukemia, different types of cancers, which were going to have different types of pain associated with it and different things that would happen along the way. And we kept asking the doctors and asking and asking and asking. They wanted to have that as a plan B and couldn't get it. The people just kept saying, yeah, we'll get it to you. We'll talk to you. We'll talk. And then finally my mom collapsed. It was almost exactly, they were given 6 months and still doing okay a year later. And my mom collapsed one morning and ended up going by ambulance, ended up in palliative care. And I was just so upset because they thought she was now on a big respirator, like big tube. And they said, we don't know if she can get out, if she can recover. And I remember being so upset that the MAID paperwork wasn't in place. And I remember going out to the nurse's desk and just being so upset and saying, like, a year, we've been asking for a year. We've been trying to get this set up for a year. And the nurses sort of looked at each other and rolled their chair back and reached up to a binder, pulled it out, unclicked it, handed me the paperwork and said, there you go. And I was like, are you kidding? That's it. And that was the simplified application form to get it rolling. Anyway, within a day, a doctor came down and met with us and my parents and spent a lot of time with them and went through all the paperwork and got it signed by my parents, individually. And then my mom recovered and walked out. But that's when the paperwork got set up. And so, it was there for them in the end if they needed it.
The peace of mind matters.
Oh, yeah. And
of knowing that everything's been taken care of. If that's the route you want to go, the peace of mind matters a lot.
Yeah. And we were 100% sure. We actually, as your parents get older, you're sitting there with them watching TV and we'd be watching some show about, elderly people in the nursing home. And they used to always look at each other and say, that's not going to be us, is it, George? And my dad would say, nope, that's not going to be us. And so we sort of always thought they had this weird pact that they were going to go out together somehow. So then when they both got sick and they signed up for maids and we mentioned that to them, they went, "What? No, of course not." And we were 100% sure that my mom in the end would use it because with lung cancer can be a very horrible ending.
Yep.
And my dad was, on the fence, and my dad passed away first, and he went into when they couldn't do anymore, he went into palliative care, and they said, "We'll take care of you. He's only going to last 1 to 3 days. We'll take care of you. There won't be any pain." Well, 2 weeks later, he was still in there and, watching TV. We watched movies together, all that sort of thing. And he was just getting thinner and thinner and having more sores on him and stuff like that. And one day we walked in and he just said, "Call the doctor. I want to invoke it." And we were sort of surprised because we thought, but they couldn't control the pain anymore. And so, he, again, they had to meet privately. They had to do all the approvals, make sure that there's no pressure. And, he was still alert and talking and laughing, and he was a huge Montreal Canadian fan, huge. He was born in Quebec, and so my brother brought in this vintage Montreal Canadian video, hooked it up to the TV. We were all there, and he was watching this going, "Oh, there's Rocket Richard. I met him on a beach," and he was, and he went out peacefully in the end. And it's amazing for our family because in the end, my mom did not choose it. And we have a lot more grief around the ending of my mom than we did my dad. It's amazing, when I have meltdowns and that sort of thing, it's always over my mom. And because of her ending was a lot different than my dad's ending. But it's a very personal choice. And I'm just glad it was an option for them. It gave them tremendous peace of mind.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
It's like you say, it's when the suffering becomes too much, right? They can't control the pain anymore. So
No.
maybe he sticks around for another 2 or 3 weeks. It's like when you were in a level of pain like that, you just want it to stop as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Because you can't think, you can't act, you can't speak. You just need it to stop.
Yeah.
And I understand that kind of pain. I do. I really do. So I think MAID as an option when you are near end of life and the suffering has become so much that you just are praying for a quick ending.
Yeah. Wouldn't we all want that? I mean, and we're at different stages of the laws with regard to medical assistance in dying, and anybody can't just, even if you're elderly and unwell, you just can't automatically get MAID. You have to have a medical. You have to have like a dying situation, whether it be a disease or something like that. So it's tricky, and I understand it's very, very personal for everybody. And
it is. And it's like
again, it's like abortion in one way. It's like it's not a service that everybody is going to use or everybody will want to use for themselves, but you sure as heck wants the choice.
Exactly, right? Like you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it, but having it in place, it's like a lot of medical things. You don't have to do it. No one's forcing you to do it. But not everybody. I mean, I think a lot of times the biggest resistance to it sort of falls on the religious side. And so lots of people, I think, are religious and aren't concerned, but not everybody is. And I don't know. I don't know if there's been studies done on that or not, but that's my experience a lot of times is that people think that it's not really our right to decide when you end, but I know I don't want to suffer,
Yeah, see,
that's the big thing.
See, I thought about it for myself, wondering, and it's like I'm such an optimist, and I'm such my zest for life is such that it's like I think I was like 8 when I said it's like I'm going to be around till at least 102.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that like It's like, I'm never going to die, type thing. I know
Yeah.
I am. Like this, but it's like, I want to see what's going on. I'm too curious. It's like, I want to know what happens 500 years from now. I want to be around for it. But I think it's one of those situations, no matter how you feel about it, however you think you're going to feel about it, you don't really know until you get there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like you have to have experience. Like we all think, it's like pain. Well, no amount of pain will make me give up on. It's like life is too.
You'd be surprised.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Like my mom, when my dad passed away, she moved in with us for a while, and it became extremely hard. And to the point that it was affecting us medically. And so as the caregiver, I needed to be healthier to look after her, and she was doing pretty well. So she moved into a seniors independent apartment sort of complex where they made meals for you, but you had your own small little apartment. And, she was kind of on the cusp of really being in the right spot. She probably could have used more care, but I guess I became her full-time care. And so she went up and down, but when she was really struggling, she would say, I just want this to be over. I just want this to be over. And then you're like, okay, well, what do I say? Because you do have the option, but you're not trying to encourage anything, but you don't want to see your mom suffering. And, so when that would happen, we'd sort of have a careful conversation and just say, Mom, you do know everything's in place, and when you want, we can take care of that if you have any questions. And sometimes she had questions, and it was incredible that the doctors from the palliative team would come to her apartment and talk to her about some of her questions and her worries and things like that. So we really had pretty incredible care. But unfortunately, she got COVID in the end.
Damn.
And so, yeah.
Boy.
So, but she did actually recover from COVID, but at that point was too unwell to go back to her apartment. So she went to hospice care, and we have an absolutely fabulous hospice care facility here. And they told my mom and dad right from the start that when they needed it, they could go to hospice. And we had done a tour of the place and knew how wonderful it was. And so in the end, my mom was in hospice. It was a beautiful place, and her room was beautiful, and she, everybody was there. And and so, if everybody could be in such a great place in the end to have hospice care.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a downer conversation.
No.
Let's go.
It's not the one we expected to start with, but like from judging from the comments in the chat, a lot of our audience are saying thank you for sharing.
I talk a lot.
That's okay.
That's okay.
So do we. I got a bit of Irish gift of gab in me. This is the thing here, you see.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's the Irish in me too. I don't know.
Your experience of the healthcare system in New Brunswick, because that is a big topic right now in the election, how that has been going, and now I think they were talking about community care models that centers that had been promised, and not all of them had been constructed. How, in your experience, like, it seems that at the moment that you needed it, you were able to get that care for your parents. But it seems that that's not necessarily, it's becoming less and less guaranteed to everyone based on what seems to be happening with the healthcare system. You tell us a little bit more about, like, it's kind of a weird segue from what you're doing what you were talking about, but how that's sort of how that's manifesting as an issue, and how people are experiencing it on the ground with the current government.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that navigating the healthcare system with my parents was not easy. I might have made it sound that it was easy. It was
Mhm.
not easy. And I have worried and worried about seniors who do not have someone like me. I caused a lot of problems at that hospital demanding
Mhm.
care and demanding to be let into the emergency room. Now, COVID was terrible and people weren't allowed to go in. And I kept saying to my partner, I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to get arrested when I go up to the hospital, because my mom and dad had passes. When you're that ill, the oncology department gives you a pass that if there's a crisis and you go to emergency, you are allowed in. And one of the things that I found to be really problematic during COVID was that there were people being sent in there, a lot of senior people who have memory issues, all that sort of thing. And so when they go in, they can't speak for themselves, or they're speaking for themselves, but they're way off. And when we first started going in, my mom would sort of recite to them, what was happening and some of the problems. And I'd be behind her going, like, that's not it. Like giving the doctor but she would get mixed up on her days. She was taking chemo and was ill. And, the doctors would always say, so how are you, Alice? And she'd say, oh, fine. And I'm like, no, she's not. She collapsed. Her, blood cell count, so it was difficult. And I would go in and they'd say, well, you have to wait in the parking lot. And I'd be like, no, I'm not moving. I'm not waiting in the parking lot. And so the patient advocate at the hospital became my best buddy, because I had them on speed dial, and so it was very difficult, and it broke my heart to see how many elderly people were in the hospital with no advocate,
Yeah.
nobody fighting. We had people, like I was walking down the hall one time and I heard my mom, this was at the very beginning of her illness, fighting with someone about a needle. And I walked in and I said, what's going on? And they said, well, she doesn't want to take her insulin. And I was like, probably because she doesn't take insulin. And it was for the lady in the next bed. So I lived there 24/7. I think they probably just shook their heads when they saw me coming. And it was my full intention that when my parents passed away, I was going to become a full-time senior advocate in the same fashion that I am for 2S LGBTQI plus youth. Unfortunately, policy 713 came into play, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that. But I have kept every note since the day we went into the hospital with my parents. I have a calendar. I have things I figured out on my own that worked. Even some of those pill case things that you get from the drugstores were mixing up my parents. And when I talked to them at the drugstore, they'd say, yeah, everybody says that. And I'm like, then why aren't you fixing that? Anyway, so I mean, I could literally take out my calendar and say, oh, my mom took this medication on March 17th at 3:00. Like I have all that to go into to be my next thing.
Wow.
But I just can't do it yet because of this stupid policy 713 stuff. Anyway,
Well,
to your question, I think the clinics will be a huge improvement. And I think they're necessary. The waits are long. I was into a doctor's appointment this week, and my doctor reminded me, it was so long I forgot. I've been like a year and a half on a list to get in to see a certain doctor. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I was on a list for that, or I was waiting for that. So I think these clinics they're crucial. And I think they will be really important. And I think, the plan that they're talking about, where they're going to recruit, and everybody keeps saying, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? Well, I think the problem has been our existing government has not been negotiating with nurses. The old comment, well, just go to Alberta if you don't like it. So they haven't been doing anything to retain healthcare workers. They're pushing them away. So we get a new government in that respects them and listens to them. For example, Susan Holt is very collaborative. And I know that she has gone around. She has met with me. She has met, like when she's talking about disability, she meets with the disability people. When she's talking about the queer community, she meets with people from the queer community. When she's talking about healthcare, she meets with the doctors, she meets with the nurses, she meets with the teachers. She, her plans are based on what the boots on the ground are saying. And I think that's key to resolving any problem. You don't just take somebody in an office who thinks they know the answers and just comes up with policy or lack of policy. So I think the clinics are what the doctors and the nurses are saying we need. And I think they're the experts. And from what I can see, she's listening. I've had the experience myself. She has called me in. I've been at the legislature when this first started with Policy 713 and was in there every day watching the goings on from the gallery. And I can tell you that could be a TV show, watching that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's where I kind of met your guest the other day, Don Darling. I watched the podcast with Don Darling and I thought, they don't need me on here. They could just put my face on him and everything he said would just be exactly what I would say. So I met Don at the very start of the Policy 713 thing. I was being called from all over Canada, media, that sort of thing. And my phone rang and it was Don Darling, and I hadn't spoken to him before, but I knew of him as the mayor and I followed him and I liked what he had to say. So we chatted for about 45 minutes and then he hung up and my wife said, well, who's that? And I said, well, that was Don Darling. Well, what did he want? I said, I don't know. I don't know. And he didn't ask me to do anything. He didn't ask me. He was just like, call me up to talk. And so that became the beginning of our friendship. And then we met several times. And we spent a lot of time in the legislature watching the goings on. And it was kind of a great partnership because I knew everything about Policy 713. He knew a lot about the goings on. And I'd be like, why is that bell ringing? Why are they all getting up? And why that? And so he would tell me that. And then he'd say, what are they talking about? And I'd explain the policy. So we tag teamed pretty well.
Outstanding. I have to run in a second here, but before I do, I noticed a few people in the chat were asking if we could get into some detail on what Policy 713 is, because not everybody fully understands it. So just before I go, I want to say thank you for joining us today. I have a meeting in a few minutes, but I have to take my big dog out. I'm sure you saw her on screen there a moment ago. She always comes in at the same time to go, hey, Dad, it's time to go. It's time to go. So thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to meet and chat with you, but I do have to go. And kids and cubs, I will see you very, very soon. Take care.
Have a great day, Mr. Grizzly.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. So, I was going to transition. I'm glad that the kids mentioned that because how did you, let's go back a little bit and say, like, how did the issue of becoming an ally to us LGBTQ plus youth come about? And then what, maybe it coincided with Policy 713, but I have a feeling that you may have been there a little bit before that, or a lot before that, actually.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? And then, like, because Policy 713 started rather innocuously enough, and then, I know, for example, from what I remember from having reported on it before on the show, that it was Dominic Carty, who's now, I think, the leader of the Canada Future Party, if I'm not mistaken, was the education minister at the time, was writing the policy, had it on the premier's desk, was not getting a response, and after a long time of not getting a response, instituted it. But I don't know if that was a revision to the policy or if the policy existed before.
Okay, yeah. So one thing, I know in the introduction you made a comment that I was maybe a founder of Pride in Education, and I am not, and I would like to clarify that I'm not a founder. The year I was at the very first meeting at the department, the New Brunswick Teachers Association, the people who were interested in starting some sort of group, I went to that meeting, but it happened to be that I was on a deferred educational leave that year, so I put my name down as interested but didn't actually join. And I got asked to join the next year, but anyway, so Pride in Education started somewhere around 2010, and it's a group of teachers, which is, we were told by EGAL Canada, the only group of its kind in Canada, because we decided to get together and sort of fight our own employer, fight the government, and to try to protect and create policy for 2S LGBTQ students. And, as a teacher, you're always told, don't speak out, don't say anything to the media, don't whatever. And we just said, well, we're going to. And so it started around that time. And so they basically initially started off as just hosting GSA, Gender Sexuality Alliance conferences for the kids. And so these would be weekend conferences that teachers would bring their students to. And they're amazing conferences. We had incredible guest speakers like, Olympians and Rick Mercer and, people like it was a great conference. The kids called it Gay Disney. And in fact, many of them, when they would go back to school on Monday, struggled going back so they would go into, we would have this amazing facility and it'd have programming. So they might be doing art, they might be learning how to make videos, they might be doing square dancing, they might be learning educational stuff. So they could sign up for a whole host of things. Plus there would be a dance, plus there would, so it was just an amazing weekend for them. So I got involved one time because I took my students, the second year they had it, I took my students down. And one of my students got in trouble and another student got in trouble. They got in trouble together and they were going to call their parents. And my student had a complete hysterical breakdown. And turns out they had forged their parents' signature and told their parents. That's how, a lot of desperation in young queer kids because they're not out to their parents. And so one boy that got in trouble was not concerned at all. And they made him call his parents and tell his parents what they'd done and come get them. And it was quite a ways away. It was a couple hours away on a late night, raining. And I was upset. They were talking about getting the students, and my student was on the floor, and they always had counselors there at these, and I was just like sitting there listening, and they were trying to calm him down, and my anxiety was going up and up and up. And then at one point they said, okay, you need to call your parents, and I lost it. And I stood up and I said, you're not calling his parents. You're not in charge of him. I'm in charge of him. And I just freaked out, and I don't cry. But anyway, I took off out of the room down the hall, and one of the Pride and Education members came after me, and I was crying, and I said, you can't call his parents, he's almost suicidal on the floor. And anyway, so they decided they weren't going to call the parents, blah, blah, blah. And whatever. Anyway, long story short, by the next morning, they asked me to join Pride and Education, and that's how I became a part of Pride and Education.
Okay.
And
whoa.
So I've just, I was a high school teacher for a long time, and we didn't have GSAs and things like that. And yet, you got the gaydar, right? Like you see kids who can't make eye contact with you, all sorts of different things. Kids are bullied, this and that. And I had no way to intervene. They had no protections for policy. They didn't have anything. And so finally, when Pride and Education started doing this sort of thing, we formed a GSA at our school, and I just became like a fierce advocate no matter what happened in school, because kids got over-disciplined. They would be bullied, and then they would freak out in class, and they'd end up in the office, and we're going to suspend you, and I'd be in there arguing, going, you can't do that, you don't understand. Kids can't come tell. They can't come tell you how they're being bullied, which is all about the day of silence, right? It's about, if I'm teased at school as a little kid because I wear glasses, I can go home to my parents and say, they're bullying me because I'm wearing glasses. Or if I was brown or something, chances are I'm going home to brown parents, or maybe one brown parent, and I can tell them, and they will defend me, and they will go to the school. Well, these kids can't go home and say, he called me the F word, or he called me this or that, because they might know how their parents feel about it, that sort of thing. So these kids suffer in silence, and that's how they develop mental health issues, is because for years and years and years and years they suffer in silence. And so I just took on that role as a fierce advocate. And, you know, some of them get kicked out. They're sleeping in parks. I had this experience. So a kid at school who was just a great kid was at the office upset. And when I spoke with him, he was like, yeah, I lost it. I told the teacher to F off. And I was like, what? Why? He goes, I've been sleeping on a park for 3 days. I'm tired. And this, whenever time I put my head down, the teacher would say, sit up. So there's so many things in schools that we don't understand. And these kids don't speak up. And so they are
Right.
over disciplined. And if you're on a
Right.
park bench for a few days, you might start getting into substance abuse to keep yourself warm and all these things that happen. So that's how I got into it. And there were times I was nose to nose with administration. They're like, you know, what are the names of the kids in your group? I'm not telling you. What? Well, then you're going to get fired. And I'd be like, go ahead. I had a lot of discipline letters in my HR file, but all over defending these kids. And they'd say, you can't go to the media. And I'd be like, yeah, well, I am. And so I never got fired. You know, whatever. Did my thing, never got fired.
Yeah.
Anyway. So then I was so we had conference after conference. Our conferences just got bigger and better and more amazing. And I actually fundraised with my students and took my students every second year to the National Egal Canada conference. I took them to Winnipeg. I took them everywhere. And I don't think I would have stayed in teaching. At about year 10 or 12,
Right.
I was like, you know, I like this, but I don't love this. But then I got involved with the GSA kids, and yeah, that's what brought me to school every single day. And even kids who graduated, I would get phone calls in the summer. Can you help me? I'm on the street in Halifax, and you know, I'm hungry, and like I'd make phone calls to people I knew in Halifax. Like it's just, you know, I've been there. Right? I was a young queer kid in the closet, and, you know, and so deep down, I think a lot of us know the pain. And I think I had it easy
Mm-hmm.
because I had a lot of friends. I played sports. I wasn't harassed, but I still felt it. I still heard the jokes, all like, you know, so it's internal. And with TV and social media and stuff like that, the bullying has gotten worse, and so it's a lot more vocal now in junior high. Middle school's the worst. The kids will all say that middle school's the worst. And so I don't know, I just took it on as my mission. And then finally, after years and years and years, we always wanted to educate the teachers because we're having all these conferences. Right. Kids were getting educated, but the teachers weren't, and they weren't putting anything to educate the teachers. So how can the teachers protect kids in class? Right. They didn't even know how to address it. Like if someone called someone a slur in class, instead of addressing it directly, they would just say, like, stop it. And you know, there are ways to address it. And right. These kids are bullied differently, again, because they have no one they can tell. They can't go to administration without outing themselves. They can't right. go to their parents without outing themselves. So they take it, and they take it, and they take it. And, you know, they do end up with anxiety and mental health. And then, you know, recently there have been groups and people around saying, you know, they just say, oh, well, all queer kids have mental health. No, all kids that are bullied for years and years and years will have mental health. It's not, you know, an automatic thing. And so our goal in Pride in Education, my thing has always been, we need to prevent harm rather than deal with it the rest of their lives. Don't let right. them be harmed and then have to have mental health counseling and maybe anxiety medication and stuff like that. Stop it. Like, prevent it in the first place.
Yeah,
and that's where Policy 713 came in. And Policy 713 actually began many years earlier as Policy E9. So the first year that I wasn't even involved in Pride in Education, at the time, New Brunswick had 26 or 27 districts, all small little districts around the province. And mm-hmm. so the chair and some of the people at the start in Pride in Education, they were all from the south. down around the St. Stephen area. And so they created a policy called E9, and it was really the very, very beginning of Policy 713. And they presented it to the district, and the district adopted it, and they started doing training with teachers and educational assistants and bus drivers. But then shortly after they started that, the government amalgamated all the districts, and we ended up with 4 districts, like north,
Right.
south, east, west. Well, 8, I guess, with 7. Anyway, so you couldn't take that one that was implemented in one small part of the province and implement it everywhere. So it
Right.
kind of got put on the back shelf, but Pride in Education kept working on it. And then one of our members ended up at the Department of Education and was an advocate. And so we kept refining it. And the Department of Education was funding our conferences after a couple of years. And Pride in Education was going into the Department of Education, and we were working on some of their inclusion policies, some of their school assessments. We were doing a lot of work with them, but we still couldn't get teacher training. And so the
Okay.
policy was being worked on behind the scenes from like 2010 right up until when it was let up or released in 2020. But it really around 2000, I think 18, 19 is when it really switched over to Policy 713, and they were really working on it. And so the MBTA, every year you have teacher training, like a full day around the province, and we would do a session, but the same 6 or 7 teachers signed up year after year after year, which doesn't help the whole population.
Right. Right.
So, a couple of years ago, 2000, when did this all start? Seems like a long time ago, but 2023? Yeah. In April. So we finally got permission from the department and the MBTA to have almost like a GSA event for teachers, like a full day. On
Okay.
those days, teachers normally sign up and they'll go 1 hour to this and 1 hour to that. We ended up having a full day conference called Pride in Education. And same idea as a little mini GSA for the kids. We had an opening ceremony, we had guest speakers, we had people from the Purge, and teachers could like sign up for all different things. And one was we wanted teachers because a drag time, story time was a big thing, and trying to encourage kids to want to read. And
Right.
so there were schools that were bringing kids in, drag time, story time. And so we set up a little mini drag time, story time for teachers. We brought in all the little elementary chairs, and a drag performer came in and held the book up, and the teacher sat there to show like this is what it looks like when you come into the school. So
Right.
it was just a great day. Or anyway, so we were planning that, and it was set for I think May 8th, Friday, May 8th. Well, in April, we were at the department finalizing all the plans, and they had given us a $14,000 budget. And just like teachers always do, you spend your own money and you hope you get it back. So we always, for our conferences, we spent our own money. So we had spent a lot of money, 3 or 4 of us. But we started saying, how come we're not getting the check like a month or so before? How come, this is kind of weird. How come they haven't done this? And one of the directors that was working with us said, look, I don't know what's going on. Something's going on, but don't worry. If they don't fund it, I'll take it out of my budget. So we move forward. And anyway, then in a couple weeks later on a Friday at 4:30, because that's when they like to do that, I got an email basically saying that Policy 713 was going to be under review and not to present it. That was one of the topics we were presenting at the teacher conference. And we also weren't getting funding. So we had an emergency pie meeting, Pride in Education. As Rick Mercer said, everybody loves pie. And said, how are we going to deal with this? We didn't want the conference to get canceled, so we decided not to go public with it. So we just carried on. Our director said, don't worry, we'll reimburse you, we'll get you the money, just keep going. But we knew that we started getting hate mail and stuff like that, and we hadn't got that in a long time. So we notified the MBTA. So several MBTA members came to our session. It was at a school that had a big long driveway off the highway, and it was all blocked off because at lunchtime they brought in food trucks for all the teachers when they came out of all their different sessions and
Right.
choose their food truck. Well, lunchtime rolled around and everybody, that was there for whatever, history and math and whatever, everybody starts rolling out of the school. And this group of protesters had driven around the barricades and were raked practically to the front door with all these really horrible signs. And protesters and the teachers that were there for like math and history and science, they were just absolutely shocked. They just didn't know what was going on, because even teachers were saying, why are you guys still doing this? It's like 2023, nobody cares anymore. But we knew differently. So when they
Right.
walked out and saw that, they were really upset. And some of them went over to confront these protesters, and the MBTA folks had to say, like, separate them and say, just go about your business. And that was, and then by the end of the day, the Higgs government had released a press conference or a press release on it. And, distancing themselves from Pride in Education and everything. And it was just completely false information because they had been funding us. We had been meeting at the department. And
Right.
anyway, so that was the beginning, and saying that they'd gotten these hundreds of emails and all that kind of stuff. And
Which turned out not to be true.
right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for people who don't know what Policy 713 is, do you want me to explain
Yes,
a little bit
please.
what it is?
Yes.
So, back in the day, if you had students who were maybe disabled or hearing impaired or blind or anything, in my day, they went to a special school, right? Because we didn't have accommodations set up to be able to accommodate them in schools. Well, now we take students that need accommodations, and we create wheelchair ramps, and we put in elevators, and we allow service dogs, and we assign educational assistants to work with these students so that they can all get an education and be successful and graduate and move on in their life. So the schools are doing that with everything, with Indigenous students, with just trying to make it inclusive so that everybody has the best chance to succeed. Well, the 2S LGBTQI students were struggling, and we knew from the data. I did my grad work in it. We know there's a high rate of substance abuse when they're left on their own. We know from bullying, and homelessness and dropout rates. And, there's even reports out there about the high number of them that end up in the criminal system, like in prisons. And so Policy 713 was the creation of accommodations in the school to help those students. So kind of like putting in the wheelchair ramps and putting in the elevators and providing, it was not curriculum. It was nothing that was being taught to any students. It basically was a set of rules for schools to follow to help those kids be more successful.
Right.
Things like, if the students want to have a GSA club, the same as a Lego club or a sports team club, then you have to allow it. So having a GSA club, having just all different things that make them safer, having a specific part of your discipline policy around those things, allowing assemblies if they want them, allowing them to use preferred names, pronouns, because other students can use whatever name and pronoun they want. That's part of the whole thing, right? So Policy 713 just put in place things to accommodate those students, and it required teachers to get some professional development on those students, to know about their issues, training maybe how to deal with it in the classroom if there's bullying, just things to accommodate them so that they could get through school, become happy, healthy adults, and live their lives. And it was just a bunch of things, allowing them to play on whatever sports team they wanted to, things like that. It's a small document. It's, 5 pages, including definitions, that sort of thing. But it just set up accommodations to let those kids be successful. And when the government sent out media statements and did interviews, they totally misled the public. They talked about kitty litter boxes, which, that's the old spider in the ear, ate your brain away thing that we had in the, 70s and 80s. I mean,
Right.
just a complete, there's not kitty litter boxes, but the government put that out there and did interviews and talked about that. So people who didn't understand would be like, what? We can't have that. That policy 713 is horrible. And they talked about curriculum and that you're teaching sex to like 5-year-olds. They like actually use things like that. Well, nope, it's not curriculum. They talked about it being sex ed. Nope, it's not sex ed. They talked about drag queens coming in and how they're dangerous. Nope, that's not it. So they threw out all these things that had absolutely nothing to do with policy 713, like nothing. And people bought into it. When your government tells you something, you think, well, it must be true. And it's, it was a lot of disinformation, and it spread a lot of anti-trans, propaganda. And it's hard for people to unlearn that. And we've just sort of been playing, whack-a-mole. And, they say something and we're like, no, 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 no. They say something else. No, 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 no. They say something else. No, 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 no. And it's hard to keep up with all the disinformation. And it was very harmful. Within the first couple of weeks, we had a suicide attempt, and had not had that in a couple of years that we knew of, because we share a lot of information around the province.
Right.
Kids were reporting that for the first time, they felt safe at school because now there were policies, and kids had gone to the GSA conferences. They knew this policy existed. They knew they were protected. Right. And so now they knew there was something in place. And teachers got a little bit of training on it. And so teachers knew the policy was in place. And it was actually part of the discipline forms that would say, was this harassment, gender-based, or, sexual harassment or homophobic. And so it really, it helped them, it empowered them. And so it's a great policy. In its original form, it's a great policy that really worked and helped those kids. It only pertained to those kids. It doesn't matter if there's a student in school that has an EA for maybe learning disabilities or anything like that. That doesn't affect any other student in the class. And policy 713 did not affect anybody else in the class, but the government did a lot of fear mongering to make parents think that they were going to lose their rights and that it was going to affect their kids. So now the rant of everything that we hear every single day, like every day I'm called a pedophile, every day I'm called a groomer, all that kind of stuff, always by nameless people though, right, on social media. And they're like, stay away from our kids. We're not interested in your kids. This is a policy that helps those kids, might help your kid, but maybe you don't know that yet. But anyway, and then the parents' right thing, that was a really catchy slogan.
Yep.
And that took us by surprise. And that's been a hard one to combat, because the government has convinced them that they're not going to have the right to raise their own kids and make decisions about their own kids. It's a slogan that started in the southern U.S. in, Christian nationalism in this U.S., and it spread through the U.S. and totally catchy. It scares parents, and it caught on.
As an educator, I can't imagine what it'd be like to have the people that are supposed to be representing you in government suggesting to your fellow citizens that you are trying to keep secrets from parents. You're trying to cut parents out of the lives of children, you're encouraging children to lie to their parents, and that you're even encouraging or facilitating or putting ideas in children's head about, wanting to change their gender, rather than simply saying, we live in a big world with a wide variety of people, and these people are here too, and be nice to them, right?
Sorry about
How
my
how
dog.
how that's okay. How does it hit, to all of a sudden have your government turn around and say the teachers are the enemy? Because, right, I see it as, this is not information that belongs to the government or a school board or a teacher to share or keep secret. It's just not their information,
I'm going to
right?
shut my door. Hold on one
Okay.
second. I can't hear a thing because of my crazy.
No worries, no worries. We love the Beaver Lodge pets. Somebody wants to be on camera and become a star. Kits, yes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back.
There we go. How does it hit all of a sudden being cast in the role of the villain? Like, there's one political party that's supposed to represent everybody, that's like pointing everybody in the direction of teachers,
Yeah.
stoking their fear and saying, there's your problem, go.
It's terrible. It's really, really terrible that the government turned on teachers. They really they villainized them and scared the public into like you said, keeping secrets and that sort of thing. And teaching is a hard job, and it's becoming harder and harder all the time. And extremely inappropriate to do that, and it's just not true. Since I started teaching in my even when I did my teacher education, for example, if we look at the names, that they've pulled that from the policy now. So what the government did was go in and they tried to change it several times. First, they tried to change it that those kids couldn't play on whatever sports team they wanted. For example, they really targeted trans kids. And you can tell from all their posts, the main thing is that they don't even really believe trans kids exist. They don't affirm them, whatever. So because they don't exist, we're going to do this and this. So they tried to change it that they couldn't play on sports teams. They found out they couldn't do that because in New Brunswick, sports are controlled by the MBIA, and they have a policy that they can play. So they had to backtrack on that. And then they started off by saying they can't use the names that they want, nicknames or pronouns, which pronouns are becoming a thing. You don't have to be queer to put your pronouns in.
No.
It's just something that people do. Even in the business world now, you'll get an email from someone, and it'll say, she, her, L, whatever. And so they made it that they couldn't do that.
Yeah,
And
I find them useful because, we live in like, take it out of the rainbow thing. We live in such a multicultural country that we interact with people who have names that when we see them for the first time, I don't know if this person is male or female or what. The name is so foreign to me, and it's just so helpful to say, oh, okay, now I know how to address my letter.
yeah, so and it's not a big thing. So many things they meet, and then they started saying, well, you have to go if you want to use a different pronoun or name, teachers have to contact your parents. And teachers were in an uproar saying, no, I'm not doing that. Or you have to force them to go to counseling. And then the psychologists in the province said, it can take like 2 years to get into counseling. So what are you going to do? Say to a kid, you can't use the name, whatever, for 2 years. So they put in all these things, they backtracked, they put it in, they took it out. And in the end, they made it that the kids could not use their own names or pronouns for anyone that was using a name that went against their, I don't know, biological gender.
So if your name was Ashley and you wanted to be called Ash, that was fine because it's like a nickname or a shortened name. But if I'm Brad and and want to be called Brenda now, that was a whole different thing.
Well, and they said, well, you're being discriminatory because what if you're Johnny and you want to be called Junior and you're straight? Can you change your name if you're straight? And they're like, because how can you change your name and your whatever if you're straight? But it's discriminatory if you say these kids, and how do we know? And Bill Hogan, the Minister of Education, said, well, you just ask them. Can you imagine as a teacher, you're going through attendance on the first day of school and someone says, oh, I'd like to be called that. And you look up and you say, well, are you trans? I need to know if you're trans. Like, imagine saying, are you gay? Because I got to call home if you're gay, or I got to call home if I got to send you to a counselor if you're trans. You can't do that. And so the government keeps trying to, again, spin it that before teachers were put in a bad position because they had to lie. No, they didn't. And now they're saying, teachers are not in that position. Now teachers are in a terrible position because we've always, my first year teaching, every single day when I started the first term, I would have my printout list of names of kids. And I taught phys ed. So the kids would all be sitting on the bleacher and I'd say, okay, I'm going to call out your name and I have to use the name that's on my form here. And if you go by a shortened form, or if I mispronounce it, or you prefer your middle name or another name, let me know so I can fix it on my attendance sheet. So I would go through and say, Mark here, Jerry here, Jonathan, I like John, okay, whatever. And sometimes people would say, I go by something like I go by Star. And I'd look at them and then that's just their nickname. They've been called Star since they were in kindergarten. And right. I don't care what their name is. It doesn't matter to me what their name is. I just want them to be comfortable. If they've been called Star their whole life when their real name is Mark, go for it. That does not mean that they're gay or trans or anything. Like, what you're called is just a comfort thing. And I don't focus on it. I don't give a hoot what name you give me.
It's like literally the least important thing.
Right.
I mean, it's important because you want to be respectful to someone, to refer to them as they would like to be referred, so that every interaction is not some type of, unpleasant experience. But other 100%. Than that,
yeah. And the government has spun it. The government has spun it that when kids tell us that, we're keeping a secret.
See, and that's why I say it's not a
secret.
It's not
they
a secret.
Said it in front of the whole class.
Right.
And it's just a comfort thing. And pronouns are a thing. Like we started at our school, all staff at one point were putting pronouns on their emails when they sent them home. It's not a big thing, but the government has made it into a big thing. Now, there are some kids, there's no doubt. So I would have my GSA meetings and there would be students that would come to the GSA meetings and, we had name tags. People just put whatever name tags on. I don't know, and I don't ask them. And people that come to our GSA meetings, it's open to anybody. It's not like when they come, I say, okay, if you're queer, sit on this side of the room, and if you're straight, sit on this side of the room, and if you're not sure, sit in the middle. We don't care. And if they want to put their pronouns on their little sticker, go ahead. I just don't care. And sometimes a student will come up to you as a teacher, and students come up to you as teachers all the time with all sorts of things. Say that they're hungry, they don't have the right clothes, whatever. And every single teacher will talk to that student, and the very first thing that they usually do is say, why don't I make a guidance appointment for you? And if they can't help them. And so teachers can make a guidance appointment sometimes faster than students themselves. And we'll say to them, if you're uncomfortable, I can take you down to meet one of the guidance counselors. But most of the kids at school in your group telling you their names and pronouns, they're fine. We don't care. We're not shoving it down their throat. We're not forcing them to do that. But the government is promoting that we're forcing them to be trans, and we're forcing them to. And the stories are wild out there. The stories are wild and I hear it almost daily. Oh, teachers are giving them hormones. Teachers are,
you don't have enough money for school supplies. How are you going to get hormones?
Exactly. And for many years at our school, before the government cut it, we had a school nurse. We're 1,100 students in high school at our school. So we had a full-time nurse. Full-time nurses are not allowed to give aspirin. Kids will come and be like, oh, Miss Costello, I got cramps or something. And I'm like, I have it, but I'm not allowed to give it to you. And yet all this crazy propaganda stuff, now they have, thinking that teachers are keeping secrets, they're giving students drugs. I mean, they're even saying things like they're coming home from school having surgery, and you've what do they call it? You've transgendered them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and this is what they've put on teachers, and the teachers were in a difficult position when this all started because they were negotiating their contracts, and it was tough for them. And with Pride in Education, when we got that finally permission to have that teacher conference, I said to them, I'm retired. We've reached our goal. We're now having student conferences. We're now educating teachers. I'm done. I'm stepping down.
Right.
I'm moving on.
Right.
To pickleball. And and then when this all happened, they asked me to stay on because I was the only one retired, and that I could go out in the public and say this and do that and go media and not lose my job.
Right.
So I ended up staying, and we contacted the lawyers and started looking at proceedings against the government. And we were moving forward in that direction. And we discovered it was going to cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, we had a meeting, and they backed out because where are 6 or 7 teachers going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars? And,
Right.
and our lawyers said, you'll probably lose your jobs, but we can sue and get them back. Well, that takes years.
Right.
And people have families and mortgages and car payments and that sort of thing. And so they backed out.
And do you really want to work there?
I know, right?
Like,
And
after they do that to you, and after you know what they're doing, like, do you really want, like, yeah, I could fight for my job back, but do I really want to work there now?
Like the policy 713, I saw someone ask about washrooms on the side. And, another thing that some of the things that policy 713 also implemented is that they said that schools have to have like single stall, gender neutral washrooms, gender inclusive washrooms, and change rooms, private change rooms for these kids. Like, the haters are out there going, oh, they're all going to go in the washrooms and they're going to, look at my kids, and they don't want to go in the washrooms. They're afraid of your kids because they get bullied badly. So this policy, like putting in a wheelchair ramp, this policy made it that schools had to have individual gender neutral washrooms and places to change for phys ed class and that sort of thing. So it's incredible. Outside of our gymnasium, we created the first ever gender neutral washroom east of Ontario, including colleges, universities, everything. And there's lineups for those washrooms. People hate washrooms and they hate locker rooms. People can look under the stalls. They can, like, everybody hates those. And, times have changed. Like, as a phys ed teacher, kids hate changing in front of other kids. They hate it.
I did.
Yeah. And
I was the first one first kid in class to go through puberty. So like I had a mustache at 10, full beard at 12, full beard and hairy chest at 12, 13. Like the hair started popping on my chest at 11. I got, because I was the first boy in the whole class to sprout hair in various places. And for some boys, like 1 or 2 years before everyone else, I got teased a lot. The last place I wanted to be was somewhere where I was taking off my shirt.
Yeah. And all the studies show that locker rooms and washrooms are the most unsafe places for any kids, but tremendously worse for those kids. So many of those kids, they would come into my phys ed class and they would not have changed for class. And at first I'd say, well, do you have any gym clothes? And they'd be no. And, when I first started my career, I was like, you got to have gym clothes. We're going to call home and find out why you don't have gym clothes. And, eventually I learned there's lots of reasons why kids don't have gym clothes. And many times they have gym clothes right in their locker, but they're not going in those stinky locker rooms where people have cameras. And, so everyone's, they're like, oh, I got to protect my kid from those trans kids. Those trans kids are not going in the locker room because they are afraid of your kids. And I mean, the lineups for the single stall washrooms, like people would be late for class because they're all lined up for those washrooms. Anybody would prefer to go into a single stall washroom. Right at the same time, like Pride in Education also consulted with the Department of Education on building new schools, and we would be in meetings with facility people, and they would show us the plans and be like, great, the washrooms now all have single stalls, you can view the sinks and stuff from the halls, there's no bullying, this is great. And then we'd say, well, what about the locker rooms? And they'd say, well, what do you mean? I'd say, you still have one great big room. And they'd be like, yeah, that's how you make them. And I said, okay. And we'd have a room of like 15 people who just met that morning. And I would say to them, I'd say, okay, so imagine this. We all arrived here today. And the first thing that someone said is, okay, everybody got to take off your clothes in front of each other and put on something else. And, at the end of the day, you got to take your clothes all off again in front of everybody here that you don't know. And you got to do that every single day. And I'd say, because that's what we're making kids do at school. In those washrooms. It's ridiculous. And high schools are grade 9 to 12 now. So you've got like 13-year-olds in with 19-year-olds in the same little tiny room. And we have cameras, like it's weird. It's weird. And, Policy 713 protected those kids from that and protected other kids as well, because once they realized that that washroom was really nice inside and the least used and had its own sink and a big counter and a private, toilet, everybody wants to use those. And those are the types of things that Policy 713 put in place in schools. It's a policy to make the building safer. And the government has convinced people that teachers are transgendering their kids. And it's insane. It's just nuts. It's just nuts.
Now, how is this? Has it, I know it's been a big issue leading up to the election. Has it been a big issue visibly in the current election, or is it more sort of like been like just this sort of undercurrent that's under all of it? People know it, but the Team Higgs doesn't want to talk about it too much because it creates too much, controversy or whatnot. They would rather talk about other things. People know where they stand on that, but they would rather not talk about it because it's uncomfortable because other people stand up to them. Or has it been like a big issue?
You know what? It's the other way around. The conservatives are pumping it.
Oh, really?
Yes, because they have made everybody afraid. So Susan Holt and David Kuhn and the other party folks, they are putting their platforms and on healthcare and senior care and recruiting doctors and recruiting nurses and teachers and the economy and the taxes on gas and homelessness and rent caps and all that kind of stuff. That's all they're focusing on. They are focusing on how to help New Brunswickers, because our conservative government's big win is that they've paid down the New Brunswick debt the most of any province in Canada, and that's what they brag about all the time. And that's their big win, and that's all they're concerned. And they have a huge surplus. And it's like we keep saying, it's like when you overpay your mortgage, but you can't put the heat on, and you overpay your mortgage, but you can't put food on the table, or you build a really nice roof, but you don't put any money into the foundation, and so your house collapses. And that's exactly what's happening in New Brunswick. Big surpluses, paying down the debt, so you get all the people that don't, they're not affected by rent and, gas prices and food prices, saying, yep, we're the best province, we have the best surplus, and we are the most fiscally responsible. So Susan Holt, David Kuhn, they're trying to focus on New Brunswickers. If you look at what's happening that comes out on Facebook, Instagram, everything, the Higgs government is just saying Policy 713, parents' rights, you're losing your parents' rights. And they're not putting anything out there as to what they're going to do. Their main thing that they said was, we're going to stay the course and keep doing great work. Policy 713, parents' rights, transgender kids. We're going to keep doing the same thing, parents' rights, transgender kids. So, and they keep talking, because Susan Holt has said that she will review it and make some revisions back to make those kids safer. So they're focusing on her saying that. Again, they're just fear-mongering, and they're pushing hate, and they're pushing disinformation, and they are trying to ignore it and focus on what most New Brunswickers. It affects such a small percentage of
Right.
kids, and yet but we know what's happening, right? There's a there's a cycle happening here. So Haig started hinting about revising policy 713. He's also thrown out there that he's going to look at and review their health care. So we know
Right.
he's going full Alberta.
Right.
We know that he's going full Alberta. And he commented that he brought in, I forget who it was, someone that's used by the Republicans a lot in the US,
Yes.
and did some training with his decision makers. That was sort of leaked. And so we know if he goes back in, those kids are going to have their health care affected, like what Danielle Smith is doing out west. We also know that if you look at some of the candidates that he's putting in place, that we're going really religious here. And there's a whole bunch of puzzle pieces here that keep coming out. But if you take all the puzzle pieces and put them together, you can kind of see the writing on the wall, because they've also announced what they call their Compassionate Care Act, which means that they are going to round up, forcibly take homeless folks who have addiction issues and put them in jail, right?
Right.
But they didn't put any money into
Right.
addiction services. They didn't put any money into all existing programs, but they recently just gave $2 million to a religious church rehab center outside of Fredericton to expand their building. So, they're expanding their building because they know there's more people coming, because the government's has made a thing where they're going to round them up. So it's kind of like the government's rounding up people to grow their business, right? And giving them $2 million. And then they're also building a prison, because everyone's like, where are you going to put these people? How are you going to put them into forced rehab? There's like a 2-year wait for people who want to go, let alone the ones you're forcing. Plus anyone, they don't consult with anybody. So it's their opinion that they're just going to force them into rehab, which all the experts are saying doesn't work, but they don't care because they don't consult with anybody that has any expertise.
Right.
And if you look at the puzzle pieces, so we've got this place out in Hoyt, we've got this new Compassionate Care Act that they're trying to, and doesn't that sound really nice? Compassionate Care Act.
Compassionate and voluntary care.
Yeah, we haven't broken any laws, but we're going to put you in jail, which I'm quite sure is a violation of your charter rights. Another one, another lawsuit will be coming. They have plenty.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is going to be very busy.
Yeah, and then you've got the candidate in Hampton, Faytine, who, if you go through her video, she's someone who lines people up on the stage and says, "You're healed, and you're healed, and you're healed," and that's one of his personal choice. And there's lots of interviews online where she's interviewing a group out of Sussex, Harvest Prison Ministries, and their job is to go into prisons and recruit people, that sort of thing. So if you look at all these pieces, Faytine, Harvest Prison Ministries, forcing people into rehab, it's a bunch of puzzle pieces all coming together here, which ends up with people being recruited, right? It's
right.
But when you say one thing in 1 month and another piece 3 months down the road and another piece down here, people aren't putting all the pieces together. But those of us who are pounding down on this every day are going, wait a minute, forced rehab, this person who talks to this person whose goal is this, we're building a whole, it's like they're building their own enterprise.
Right.
It's scary. It's scary stuff. We have to have some change here. And again, someone just mentioned, and it's true, minimum 40% of homeless folks, are members of the 2S LGBTQ community. So again, you're going after them. There's a lot of stuff here. And our government, with issues that everyone's having with pricing and housing and that sort of thing, they won't put a rent cap in. Some of the candidates that are running are landlords. for the Conservative Party. And, money, money, money. How are we going to pay for this? Yet our government has now joined in Saskatchewan and is involved in the Saskatchewan lawsuit
Right.
against kids. So you're taking New Brunswick taxpayers' money and putting it into lawsuits in Saskatchewan, and people are homeless because they can't pay their rent, and you won't put a rent cap. Like, it's crazy.
Yep.
And the premier, last time we were in court, because we have joined, so going back, dropped out of Pride in Education. How are we going to sue the government? So I don't know, somehow I ended up we created a new group called Equality New Brunswick. And we have a really great board, because Equality New Brunswick, right now we're focusing on 713, but the woman who contacted me to create this group really wants it to be a group moving forward about Indigenous issues and senior issues and healthcare and 2S LGBTQ. And so we have people
Right.
on our board who represent all those groups. But right now we're focusing on Policy 713, and we are part of the CCLA lawsuit. We're intervening on behalf of the kids here. But we sat in court. One of the last times that we sat in court, and we listened to the government's lawyers they were distancing Premier Higgs from the educational decisions. They kept saying, Bill Hogan, Minister of Education, would, he reviewed it, he did this, and he would just let the Premier know. Well, we know that's not right. There's lots of our TIPA emails out there. I mean, I have a couple of emails where the Premier himself is sending an email to his right-hand person, who's also running now, and saying, I've gone into this and I've pulled out this paragraph and I've pulled out this and I've pulled out this, and let Bill know. It's like, so you're now an educational expert. You're actually going in and pulling out curriculum, and he's never been that popular in the Francophone community. And
Right.
I have an email. There's always a lot of talk, and right from the start, many of his cabinet people were very upset with the Policy 713 decision. And as you know, like 12 walked away. And
Right.
so, we had some moles, and some of the things that the direction he was trying to go, he's trying to go in the direction of conversion therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, his wife is involved in many decisions, is what we were told. And, there's an RTIPA email that I have on the immersion program, and it's one line. Of course, there's a little word at the end, a little 4-letter word that's redacted, and it says Marcia. And it comes right from his government email to her and says, what do you think of this bleep?
Mm.
Like, he's got his hands in everything. He has eliminated elected boards, health boards. He's trying to get rid of our school boards. He's got his hand directly into curriculum. Even our Minister of Education. Our Minister of Education, a couple of months before the Policy 713 announcement was made by the government that they were reviewing it, we had a teacher who was being harassed really, really, really badly in her small little island community. And she's not even a member of the community, but the school didn't have anybody else. So she was doing their GSA group. Mm-hmm. And a member in this community, just went after her on social media and has thousands of followers, a lot of Americans, a lot of convoy people, all that. And they were threatening her, threatening to burn down her house. She was having to take stuff off the island and store it somewhere else. RCMP were involved, and she finally reached out to Pride in Education, and we contacted the district to say, you need to help this teacher, and also the Department of Education. And Bill Hogan sent that person a letter all in defense of Policy 713. And I have a copy of that letter, and it's all about the importance of Policy 713. And within a month, they're revising it because it's a bad policy. And, one of the things that they said was we were receiving emails for months and months. So I think the Premier has his hand in an awful lot of things, and people just, whatever he says goes. And that's the message that we got from the people who've all walked away. I mean, the number of people who've walked away is historical. What they say, there's only 4 remaining.
Mm-hmm.
only 4 remaining. You know,
Yeah.
if you're a hockey team, you'd be
Yeah.
fired. If you were
Yeah.
the manager of a business, you'd be fired.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Gail, we're nearing the end of our time.
Yeah.
But if I were to ask you for a general statement, why is it important for audience members from New Brunswick who are watching the show to go out and vote this time around, according to you?
I think this is the most important election of my life. Unfortunately, I've always kind of been a fear-based voter. The change that is coming is going to affect people so badly. It's in particularly trans kids, but this government is autocratic, does not consult with anybody, and I think people have lost hope. So the government has had 6 or 8 years to do their work, and everything is worse. And people keep saying, well, Susan, I don't know if Susan Holt's ready. I don't know if she's experienced enough. Well, I didn't even realize how experienced she was until I went to a dinner. And wow, wow. She is highly educated. She has worked all over the world. She has worked for companies that were in financial trouble and brought them back. She
Right.
is collaborative. She also truly cares about all different people. She will be the leader that New Brunswick needs. And I think we need to have sort of a red-green sort of government, because of course David Coon does great work as well. So we just need a change. We need to get rid of a leader who thinks he's the king and everybody else is afraid of him and does whatever he says. We're a democracy, and between Susan Holt and David Coon, we will become a democracy again, because right now we're not.
That is a great, great, great way to end that. Gail, thank you so very much. You made my job very easy.
Right?
Did. Hey, that's great. Seriously. It was, I kept on saying, like, I should probably ask something now, but this is too good. So yeah, just let her keep talking.
Well, thanks
I
for
appreciate all the insight. No, because this is it's really good. What's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on back then is because there was so many lies being told about the policy, and it was being brought in such a shady way and in such a way that that could do so much harm. And I remember when I was in high school, and I was testing the coming out waters. I think it was like grade 12 or grade 13, and we were writing essays, and I wrote an essay about actors and actresses that a lot of people thought were straight but are actually bi. It's like some of your favorite actors, maybe, and sort of like, if you like them, then maybe you'll like me, even though I'm definitely not coming out right now by broaching this topic. And teacher noticed that and corrected my copy, and in the margins was like, you might want to read Ruby Fruit Jungle. And it's like,
I love
oh,
that book. I love that book. Yeah.
right? So
Right.
Rita Mae Brown.
Yeah.
But she knew, and then I later figured out my English teacher and my French teacher,
Woo.
both women,
Yeah.
were a couple.
Yeah, way to go, way to go.
The whole
So,
time.
yeah.
The whole
You know,
time. And
that
I
little
had no clue.
thing, that little thing about you writing a story, that's all part of the coming out process, where we test the waters. I'm going to write this and let's see how people respond. And that's what we have to give kids time to do. Kids will tell their parents. Kids will come out to their parents 99% of the time. But they have to develop the self-esteem and confidence and community around them to have the strength to do that. Because if things go bad, they have this community at school of maybe teachers they can talk to, guidance counselors, but they're friends. They're not going to come out to their parents the first time they start thinking about it. They need to do those little stories. They need to make comments to friends and see who goes, oh, yuck, or who says, oh, that's cool. And so that's the importance of policy 713 as well, is it allows them to develop community, to be safe, to build up the confidence, to then go to their parents. And everybody knows outing someone before they're ready is not good. And that's a whole nother story, but I was outed. And it was, yeah, like I was homeless for a bit, and and my parents, I don't think, knew that, because they would die if they thought I was homeless. But you can't out people. You let them build community, and if you want them to be happy, healthy adults, then take care of them when they're young.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I wish you a most beaverific day.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
Bye now.
Oh, kids and cubs. That is absolutely delightful and wonderful. I think all you have to do is click the leave button on the top, and you should be okay if that's there.
I was wondering how to get out of this. The leaf.
Leave button on the top right hand, I believe.
Gotcha.
There you go.
I don't want to stay on your show all day. I got to go to pickleball. Bye now.
Bye. We rarely stick the dismounts on the show. Kids and cubs, I hope that you really enjoyed that. I personally did, so maybe it was a little selfish and indulgent on my part, but I hope that you got a lot out of it. Gail is absolutely fabulous, and we definitely need more teachers like her out there, and this is proof positive right now. You just saw it in the pudding. All right, you got to take a good long stare into the pudding, and saw like teachers are not the enemy. Teachers are not the enemy. Sometimes they are the only place a child can run to feel safe and secure. Sometimes, right? It's like the trying to make teachers the enemy itself is something that just really angers me very much, because I'm sure that there are many of us here in the chat, many of us who are watching, who have that one or two teachers that were absolutely critical in their lives. And sometimes for really big stuff like this, and sometimes for really innocuous stuff. I mean, I will always love my grade 9 teacher for introducing me to the wonders of deodorant. Changed my whole social circle. But teachers notice these things and they care. And those are the people that you want, the people that will stand up and, be the place that you can go to, will be home base, no matter what's going on in your life. That they love you, they accept you, and they just want the best for you. And they want to create the winning conditions for you to be able to learn as much as possible. And if you are worried about this type of stuff, you're thinking about that during math class or history class or whatnot. It's like you're not focused, you're not fully present for the class. So all of this is also intrinsically related to doing the best that one can do to ensure that a child gets the best possible education. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit of New Brunswick news since we're talking about here. There was some polls that just came out from Brunswick News narrative research. So narrative research that was commissioned by Brunswick News, and it says the title here: Grits lead in 2 cities, neck and neck in the third. So municipally, this is it's looking where there are at least a lot of votes that the Liberals are doing a little better in the closing days of the race, because the election, I believe, is on the 21st. And according to this from the Telegraph Journal, it says that in St. John particular, it is close, but it's like Liberal 27, PC 26, Green 7, NDP 2. And then there's other data for other cities included in this article. So if you want to go check that out, if you're living in New Brunswick, seeing how the race is, that's one place you should go. I have a feeling that will be making news all over the place in the province. So there you go. So they're talking about St. John, Fredericton, and Moncton, of course, in this article, if you would like to go and read it. Then the only reason I'm not doing it for you is because I too have a hard out in a couple of minutes and want to finish up with the bombshell yesterday at the Foreign Interference Commission. Sliding back there for a few seconds before we go, the leader of the opposition finally put out a statement yesterday, but a statement about the prime minister's testimony and not so much about anything related to him. And the only thing he put in the tweet was release the names, which again, whether the prime minister can or can legally do it is pretty much secondary to the fact that you don't just release names on demand because they have to do with open investigations and they happen to do with future court cases. And you do not want to compromise investigations. You do not want to blow up sources and methods. And you certainly do not want to create conditions by sharing too much beforehand that could make it such that someone could not get a fair trial and thus cut off all avenues to accountability. And with Pierre Poilievre keeping on repeating that others should release the names rather than him getting off his lazy ass and doing the work of finding out for himself what are those names so that he can take action within his own party to keep to maintain not only the integrity of his party, as the prime minister was mentioning, but also to be able to keep his own MPs safe when there is something in those reports that comes from intelligence that is either not substantiated enough or from only one source that is uncorroborated, and that you can stand up against that. But the framing of the prime minister and of Mr. Singh previously is really interesting because Mr. Singh framed Pierre Poilievre as someone who is signaling to the international community who would like to have some influence in Canada that he is the type of person who will look away. So that basically Canada is open for that kind of business because he does not want to know, especially if it should somehow benefit him, as is suspected based on interim reports and other information that has come into the public sphere. So that was Mr. Singh's take on it. Mr. Trudeau's take on it, or Prime Minister Trudeau's take on it, is that Pierre Poilievre is not doing the minimum that needs to be required to defend the integrity of his own party or to keep his own caucus members or members of this party safe because he does not know. So he cannot counter. So those allegations can keep running about. Those that don't have sufficient evidence or whatnot can keep on being made, or there could a whole bunch of other things that could be going on, but he's not in a position to stop it. So he wrote in this leader of the opposition message, which I mentioned before we were cutting off. This one he did post to his own timeline, but he did not post the one that he hopes that Prime Minister Modi or no one in his team sees, pretending that he is denouncing the whole India thing, which he is not. But in this one is, my message to Justin Trudeau is, now my message, so all about me. We're always starting. My message is, everybody hear this. So it's very imperious coming from on the emperor has risen to the top of the mountain and he is now going to talk at us and say, my message to Justin Trudeau is, as if that freaking matters in this case. But given that he's cast himself as the star in his own movie, my message to Justin Trudeau is, release the names of all MPs that have collaborated with foreign interference. But he won't, because Justin Trudeau is doing what he always does. He is lying. He is lying to distract from a Liberal caucus revolt against his leadership and revelations he knowingly allowed Beijing to interfere and help him to win 2 elections. So right now he is accusing the Prime Minister of having lied under oath, but he has absolutely no information because he has not seen the unredacted report, and nobody has that could tell him what's in the unredacted reports because they too are bound by secrecy. So on what basis he is claiming that the Prime Minister is lying? He has none, because he has no information. So as he is accusing the Prime Minister of lying, he is lying. We're going full Goebels here right now. I was briefed on October 14th, 2024 by Nathalie Drouin, National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister, David Morrison, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs at Global Affairs Canada, and Daniel Rogers, Director of CSIS, about the matter of foreign interference from India. The CSIS Act allows the government to offer information to any Canadian about specific risks of foreign interference without forcing them into sworn secrecy or controlling what they say. This is a lie. It's an outright lie. The two emeritus members of the intelligence community who were on Power and Politics yesterday specifically stated it. Now, yes, he did have this meeting with Nathalie Drouin, but this is not a meeting in which they shared with him any information that would be at the level of security that would be required for him to know. They only shared with him information that he is allowed to know with his low-level security clearance. So the information that he would have received from these meetings would have let them know that there's something going on, but nothing at all remotely specific that he could take action on to clean house within his own party or protect his own members or protect the Canadian public. Nothing in that meeting. He is framing this as if he got a meeting that is on par and he got information that was released at the same level as that which was seen by Green Party leader Elizabeth May and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh when they had received their clearances and got to see the unredacted report. This is not true. The CSIS Act allows the government to offer information to any Canadian about specific risks of foreign interference without forcing them. Yes, there is something called a TRM. I can't remember what that stands for off the top of my head, but they were mentioning that. But again, in that type of method to let people know, those same rules apply about not sharing top secret information with anyone. It doesn't, these types of meetings that he's talking about, these types of alternative methods, do not allow them to release the information to which he is not privy at all. There are no exceptions. There is only one way for him to get the information, and it's for him to sit for his security clearance to obtain it and then be shown the information by which he will be bound in the way that Miss May or Mr. Singh was. And there's not going to be any extra special conditions applying to him that doesn't apply to anybody else. And they're all able to talk. So it's just a lie. So that he can't talk is a lie. That he had this meeting and that it was somehow on par with all the other meetings that everybody else had is a lie. And that these alternative methods give him the same amount of meeting information is a lie. Also, the emeritus members of the intelligence community did specifically say that Pierre, as someone who is receiving information after he has the clearance, is allowed to ask for the information specifically that he wants and not see information, so it doesn't obligate him to see everything. So he could get the clearance and basically ask for information about specifically, for example, how did India interfere in the leadership race in which he won, if he wanted to maintain the integrity of his party. And he could ask specifically about who in my party is either affected, suspected, could be wittingly or unwittingly involved, and just get that information and nothing else. So you would still be free to lie about all the other stuff, like he is, and still get the specific names that he would need to take action. But he doesn't want to. He goes on to say, receiving a secret briefing would, according to Justin Trudeau's chief of staff, prevent a recipient from using, quote, the information in any manner, quote, and even where that is not the case, be briefing political parties on sensitive intelligence regarding an MP could put the leader or representative of a political party in a tough position because any decision affecting the MP might have to be made without giving them due process. I believe that that's a creative use of some of those quotes, because not being able to use the information in any manner, I suspect, would be in any public manner. But it doesn't stop you from deciding that you're not going to, that you're discreetly not going to sign someone's nomination papers. You can act on that information and use it in certain manners. Goes on. Furthermore, my chief of staff has received classified briefings from the government. At no time has the government told me or my chief of staff or any current or former Conservative parliamentarian or candidate knowingly participating in foreign interference. Here, Pierre, this is another lie. more bullshit, basically, because Pierre is trying to say that if his chief of staff received classified briefings from the government and he or she had no reason to tell Pierre anything, then there's nothing there. The two emeritus members of the intelligence community made it very clear that this type of briefing, at least at the same level that Mr. Singh got recently, and then the under redacted report, would never be given to a chief of staff. There is absolutely no context in which it would be conceivable that this would be given to a chief of staff, because first of all, the chief of staff would also have to have that level of clearance for them to be shown that type of information, which they certainly do not have. And still, the chief of staff would not be able to share that information with Pierre because Pierre does not have it. So there's absolutely no reason to give that type of briefing to a chief of staff, particularly since the chief of staff cannot hire or fire, particularly with regard to caucus members. It's not the chief of staff who signs the nomination papers. It's the leader of the party. So there's absolutely no utility in giving that information to a chief of staff. So Pierre lies about that too. Quote, if Justin Trudeau has evidence to the contrary, he should share it with the public and blow up the investigation. It seems like this is what Pierre really wants, actually, that he's working really hard to make sure that the people with whom I'm guessing it is suspected or alleged he might or may not, well, may be associating with in this case, he would like for them to have a free pass or have a mechanism to avoid accountability, which is something that releasing the names right now, just willy-nilly, just because he demands it, because intelligence works allegedly by releasing names on demand. He would like you to believe. Now that he has blurted it out in general terms at a commission of inquiry, he should release the facts, but he won't because he is making it up. Again, accusing the Prime Minister of committing perjury, which is potentially libellous. I'm hoping that there is a lawsuit or a cease and desist letter with this. The fact that he is referred to it in general terms at a commission of inquiry doesn't mean he is now free to release the sensitive information. And again, risking blowing up sources and methods, compromising investigations, and creating a basis for court cases to be thrown out on technicalities. Quote, it is beyond rich for Justin Trudeau to grandstand, given that the record now shows that he and his government, with all the benefits of government agencies, were repeatedly warned about foreign interference, including within the Liberal Party, and refused to act. Of course, that is not true. The Prime Minister spent a lot of time on the stand stating specifically how he did act, and the fact that we have this type of inquiry and that we have the types of bodies, NSICOP and NSIRA, are all due to the current Prime Minister. So he has been acting. This is a lie here. And the Conservative lawyer on the stand tried to accuse the Prime Minister of grandstanding and said that the Prime Minister was not all that familiar with the law, particularly speaking of these TRMs. And it turns out that it was Pierre's lawyer that was not very familiar with the application of the law. And the Prime Minister actually had it exactly right, according to, again, those two emeritus members of the Intelligence Committee. So right now, it's Pierre Poilievre who's been grandstanding the entire time. Quote, it is Justin Trudeau and his government who repeatedly claim that they weren't aware of foreign interference happening right under their noses, despite a paper trail of warnings from officials. It is Justin Trudeau's government which mysteriously sat on a CSIS surveillance warrant application for a Liberal power broker for 54 days. It is Justin Trudeau's party that willingly allowed the PRC consulate to bus in PRC international high school students to vote in the now infamous Han-Dong nomination race. It is Justin Trudeau who has ignored my calls to release the names of parliamentarians referenced in the Spring's NSICOP report who have wittingly worked for the benefit of foreign governments against the interests of Canada. And that's it. No ending. It's Justin Trudeau who did this. It's Justin Trudeau. And none of this is relevant to the fact that you are not getting the security clearance and that there are members of your party who are named in this, perhaps maybe even you, sir, and that you do not want to know even the most minimal information that you need to know in order to maintain the integrity of your own party, of your own processes, and to stand up and defend your caucus members in case that there is intelligence that makes one look bad, but does not have sufficient evidence to corroborate it for it to be of use. He's had all this time to prepare. He's been very silent, and I'm reading this, and this is a screed. And to me, it signifies that he has nothing. He absolutely has nothing. If this is the best he can do, after not saying anything since Thanksgiving, and after seeing the Prime Minister give his entire testimony, if that is the best response that he's got, that's his best stuff, that's his most hard-hitting stuff, and he's throwing it all out there, punch, 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 he's got nothing. And with the United States and the UK expressly coming out and suggesting very strongly that India should be cooperating with Canadian officials, and Australia and New Zealand not coming up. That's one thing I noticed. There was nothing in their statements that specifically mentioned that or urged the government of India to cooperate with the investigations, even though they did make statements in support. So all 5 IF members are there stating that there's something important going on here. And let's remember that there is an indictment in the United States. So if Pierre is accusing the Prime Minister of lying under oath, he's also accusing all of our Five Eyes partners who have just come up and offered us backing of also lying. So this guy is an international incident waiting to happen. I've repeated it, I've said it once, and I'll say it again. This man is temperamentally unfit for the position and the power over others that he so desperately seeks. Don't get angry. Mobilize. This guy cannot be Prime Minister. This should be disqualifying. And if I were the Prime Minister, I keep on saying, I would consult with all the other party leaders, and I would be tabling a bill saying that party leaders must absolutely get their NSCOP level clearance. And I would pass it quickly, like we passed COVID measures quickly. And then I would wait to see whether or not he would obtain it. And if I had to prorogue in order to give him time to do that, I would. And let the question of the day, every day, be why it is that he is not doing it. But right now, all the pressure is on him right now to come up with something. And do not be surprised in the first press conference that Pierre Poilievre will finally decide to give if he does not start attacking a journalist. But right now, Mr. Singh and Mr. Trudeau have made it such that the press can not longer try to avoid asking Pierre the question directly. So it is going to happen. And clearly, he's trying to see how this trial balloon is going to work. I'm going to guess not very well for him. Given that there are people that have had no problem going on the record stating that a lot of that which is in Pierre's statement here is basically crap. It's BS. Performance art. No basis in reality. All right, kits and cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. So tell your peeps and poops all about us. It's very important. We love it when you do. Now, if you would like to make sure that you do not miss an episode, you do not have to, thanks to the Ray Girl who has sponsored our pod page. That's podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click on subscribe there, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. Thank you so much for doing so. And thank you to the Ray Girl for sponsoring our pod page. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, then you need to make like Kit Elaine and surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where you will find our buttons like, share, and subscribe. Make like Kit Cassie and the Cowboy. Hi, Cowboy. Kit Cassie tells me that he watched our episode yesterday with Don Darling and liked it very much. So I hope you are doing well, sir. Go down to the YouTube page and click our buttons. Like, share, subscribe. It makes us very happy when you do. And you will earn our undying gratitude, which actually is quite a big deal. Now, if you'd like to help us in other ways, please find our tip jar, or as I call it, the Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. There you can support us if you like what we do and you want to encourage us to do more. Just give us an attaboy, attabeaver, attagrizzly, and buy us a cup of coffee, or maybe a Caesar for me, or a Guinness, or maybe a hot chocolate for me, because, like I say, you are what you drink. So any support that you can give us is greatly appreciated, kids and cubs. Thank you so much for your generosity, and all of you who have donated recently. We will do a donor appreciation moment at some point. There's just so much news. It's ridiculous. 3 elections, and then the U.S. election, and then Ward 15, and then just all that good stuff. By the way, Dan reports that he got to speak last night, and he thinks that he did pretty well. So way to go, my friend. Very happy for you there. Our coffee page, that QR code that just appeared, that's where you go. Or you go to ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. That is where you will find our tip jar. Anything that you can donate to help us underwrite to the costs of producing the show and bringing it to you is greatly appreciated, and we thank you. Now, if you can't contribute financially, hey, don't worry, because the gift of your attention and participation means the most to us. We cherish it so much, and we love to hear from you. So truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. Write to us. Let us know what you think, what you'd like to see on the show. @TrueEager on our Twitter feed, True North Eager Beaver on our Facebook page. And if you're listening on YouTube, write down in the comments section. You can leave us a little something. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please leave us some stars and reviews. It helps with the algorithm, and we appreciate that as well. Thank you so much. Because democracy is something that you do. Early voting in New Brunswick is now closed because the 15th was the last day, but it is still continuing in British Columbia for the next few days. I think today and maybe today is the last day, if I'm not mistaken on that. So please make sure that you get your votes in. It is very important that you do that. And do try to bring someone with you, please, because, as we say, kids do not allow other kids to do democracy alone. That would not be a good thing. And these are very, very important elections. So we really appreciate if you can do that. I did make a mistake. I'm sorry. You cannot vote by anticipation in the BC election today. The last day for that was the 16th. Which was yesterday. So voting day on the 19th for the BC elections, New Brunswick elections, October 21st. If you do want to cast a vote in other ways, I think in both of them you can still go to any of the returning offices in person up until voting day and do that. But it's a little late now for mail-in ballots and advanced polling days specifically. So please do make sure that you get your vote in. Said these races are very, very tight, and you need to make your voice heard. Now, words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Be someone's person, whatever it is, however it is. Someone's feeling low, someone, someone's feeling afraid, whatever it is. Just be someone's person. Right? Let someone know that you're there and you're available. Okay? I think we all need that a little bit. And all the stuff that Gail has shared with us sort of leads in that direction. Everybody needs an advocate. Right? So be someone's advocate. From the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver saying, it can be a tough world out there, so please do be kind and gentle with yourselves, kids and cubs. It's a very important thing. Self-care above all. All right. Okay, kids and cubs, let's just see if, once again today, I am very good at being able to do the extra. And we'll see you tomorrow. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community. And The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. And before we go, because I love leaving you a little Easter egg, a couple of dad jokes for you today, kids and cubs. What did the DJ say at the vegetable party? Turn up the beat. Ah! Finally, why did the jalapeno ask for a sweater? It was a little chilly. Ah! All right, kids and cubs, have a wonderful day. Mwah. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.